Could Auburn flip another Alabama commitment?
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. It's Recruiting Thursday, so we're hanging out with Brian Smith. He is the recruiting expert over at auburndaily.com. You were at practice yesterday, Brian. We'll get your thoughts on that, as well as the latest in the Deuce Night drama. But there's some new smoke when it comes to another Alabama commit, an in-state Alabama commit. I'll touch more on that part later. But Anthony Rogers, Turbo Rogers, the very electric, dynamic running back who's been committed to Alabama since June of last year. There's some smoke now that Auburn might be in a position to where they could potentially flip him down the road. This comes from a report from Tom Loy of 247. Over the last 3 or 4 months has just become this awesome Auburn insider at the national level, just tweeting out all of these nuggets before anybody else is. And he said, hey, Auburn folks, I'd watch out for Turbo. Brian, you're a fan of this running back. First, tell me about the player, then tell me what you think about this recruitment.
First off, he is one of the fastest players in the country. He was one of the fastest players at IMG as a sophomore, if not the fastest player. And he's a kid that just what's been dominant his whole high school career. He went over 1,000 yards as a freshman, was an excellent receiving threat. He's a punt return guy, and he's just been dominant. So Alabama got him early, and I thought, this is over. When I heard some of this smoke about a month ago, I'm like, well, let's see if it actually materializes. Spoke to somebody else today that thinks there's a chance of it as well. So this is bizarre. I know I saw your pod with Luke, you guys talk about the Alabama Auburn. This is bizarre, man. I've never seen Auburn beat up on Alabama in state before, ever. Not like this. It's one thing to win the battle. This is domination. And it's very odd to me because I don't understand how Alabama's allowing this to happen, but they are.
Yeah, and so I think there's a few elements to this. Auburn upping the pursuit of Turbo Rogers, who's a running back out of Carver. He's in Montgomery. This is a guy, though, he's dynamic, like you said, and the opinions of him by the recruiting services are all over the place. Rivals has him as the top running back in the country. ESPN and 247 has the 4th. On3 has him down as a 16th running back. So it just kind of depends. But you can't teach speed and some of the dynamic and electric things he does with the football. You can't teach some of that stuff. So did Auburn pivot and focus more on Turbo because of how they feel with Usman Chroma? With FSU and Georgia possibly lingering in that recruitment and they're pivoting? Are they, do they feel less confident about Mills Knight going elsewhere? I mean, I don't know how to read the tea leaves on this one, Brian.
I'm pretty sure Mills Knight's going to go to Ole Miss.
That's what it feels like. Yeah.
I've heard that from pretty competent person on that, but this is recruiting. Second part of it is it's also 45 minutes to Montgomery from the edge of Alabama or edge of Auburn. So it shouldn't be shocking that you're recruiting a kid that's electric and then right down the road at arguably as an important high school to you as there is in the state of Alabama being Carver. I mean, that's a school you got to recruit every year.
Right.
So I think that some people probably, even myself included, shouldn't be shocked at this. It's just that he's not the same kind of player Chrome is. And they were kind of trying to get a different dynamic. But he's so fast, he might be the fastest and most electric running back recruit in the country. So he's got his own category. As for Chroma, Florida State feels good, but I know that Auburn did at one point too. I assume they still do. He's hard to read. I don't know how that's going to turn out, but he's very hard to read.
Yeah. So you referred to the conversation, the crossover, the Locked On Auburn, Locked On Bama crossover. Be sure to check that out. We put that up on Saturday. Worth your time. Probably got more engagement from that show. Probably the most engagement from a show since the famous Charlie 5, Jake Crane debate, or infamous, I guess I should say. But a lot of people really got engaged with that conversation, Brian, because it's a big conversation that both fan bases are having against each other. I want to ask you this. these kids, these in-state kids like Turbo Rogers are now, whether should they care about this stuff or not, that's a different conversation I'm not really interested in having. But we agree that they do hear this conversation that's happening between these fan bases. And if you're an in-state target from Alabama and they're screaming as a fan base, well, in-state stuff doesn't matter anymore. We'd rather get kids from California and LA and all throughout the country. But then when they hear from Hugh Freeze and the Auburn coaching staff that you're a priority because you're in-state and we value that, that has to matter. It has to.
I mean, it's very simple. Don't allow the forest for the trees kind of statement to get in the way. You're right. And while your counterpart on that pod brought up some interesting points about transfers, this, that, and the other, at the end of the day, I like to lean on famous people that have proven it to go with it. And Bear Bryant, of all people, said this a long time ago, and I'm paraphrasing, but I'll take the in-state kid over the slightly better out-of-state kid every time because I know he's going to do everything he can for the University of Alabama. Yeah. You can insert University of whatever, any state U across the country in that scenario.
Yeah.
Auburn applies. I'll take that. And then B, if anything goes wrong in recruiting, who's more likely over an exponential long period, like a 10-year window, you're going to lose more out-of-state kids or more in-state kids to transfers. I know he brought up some of the in-state stuff. I will still bet that's an outlier. You're going to have more kids out of state. If they don't get a job as the starting, at least kick returner or whatever as a running, these guys are more likely to leave. And Auburn's class is great too, but Alabama's is awesome. I'm not taking anything away from it.
Right.
But it's just really weird how they put it together. Like you could tell he didn't like it either, but he's not arguing with the talent. So eventually that's going to bite them. They better win right away. And I mean right away, because even one of my buddies in the 7-on-7 is like, a lot of the coaches in this state are like really worried because they're not communicating with these guys.
Right.
Because it doesn't make any sense. And this is an Alabama fan. Diehard. He hates Auburn. And I'm like, yeah, that's not a good sign for their long-term. Why would you do that? What are you gaining? It's stupid. So I don't understand it, first off. And two, I think it's a very poor long-term plan for the Tide.
Yeah, and I can't wait to see the reaction if Turbo does flip. You know what all the Alabama fans are going to say? Oh, well, you know, we're focused more out of state, which is such a weird hill to die on, but they're doing it. They are putting their flag in the ground and they're saying this is what we're rolling with. And I'm guessing that Hugh Freeze and the staff love it. They love that all of these fans are being so loud about this.
It helps
because they're the total opposite, and they're going to the Turbo Rogers and the the Derricks and the Big Tonys, all these folks that they've already flipped from Alabama and saying, well, you will be cherished here. You will be celebrated here. Come on home. That's part of the pitch. You know that it is. It has to be.
Well, there's a saying in recruiting is don't go where you want to be loved, go where you are loved. And some of these kids probably grew up Bama fans. Let's not kid ourselves. More than half the state roots for Bama. That's not any newsflash. But if they don't put the effort in to recruit you, do you really want to be there? That's, what Nick Saban was the most savvy recruiter at just about ever.
Yeah.
He knew the value of in-state recruiting, and he'd go out of his way to go to the schools like Carver, for instance. He made it a priority to win battles right in Auburn's back. You and I have had this conversation 30 times. Phoenix City Central, Auburn High, Montgomery Catholic, Montgomery Carver. Auburn, they recruited there, but Alabama would beat them for kids at those schools.
Right.
Now?
Not anymore. It's not happening anymore.
You can't tell me that's not going to help them long term.
Well, and when we talk about how, perception is everything in recruiting, and Alabama, they're going to try to say it, but let's say Auburn does flip Turbo. They're going to say, well, we're focusing more outside anyway. And it's like, well, kinda, but like you tried for several of these dudes. Like you tried for Naheem Offord. You tried for Derek Smith. He was committed to you. You tried for Antonio Coleman. You can't say that you didn't because you took his commitment not once, but twice. And then Rogers was committed to you for forever. So it's not like you can backtrack and say that you did it. You lost these guys, assuming all this comes to fruition, but like you lost them all. It's not like you didn't try because you were looking elsewhere. You're just going to try to save face. And they're going to act like nothing's wrong, but things are changing. And Auburn fans should be excited about it.
Alabama fans, even if it was on film that DeBoer said, this sucks that we're losing kids to Auburn, would never say they can't do it.
Well, he just doesn't know. He just doesn't know what he's saying.
That's what I mean. Like,
come on.
This is the pure hate between the two schools coming out. period.
Yep. All right. What's the latest with Deuce Knight? I like Auburn's chances to land one of the best quarterbacks in the country. We discuss that in just a moment right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. With prices on the Game Time app, they actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch, or of course the start of your concert or theater show, whatever it is that you're buying tickets for. They go down on the app closer to the start of it. And you also can capitalize on flash deals and all-in pricing, as well as views from your seat. You know exactly what to expect when you buy your ticket via the Game Time app. I can't imagine. Can you imagine? I can't imagine buying tickets anywhere than with our friends at Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Brian, when you look at the I'm not even going to say drama. I will say drama. When you look at the drama around the recruitment and the potential flip that Auburn's trying to pull off with Notre Dame commit Deuce Knight, it seems like the cat's out of the bag now. You're seeing national reporters talking about it, putting in predictions, putting in crystal balls, where at this point, I mean, some writers have said it was imminent, that a flip was imminent. What do you think exactly happened for Auburn to pull off what will be one of the larger discussed flips in the recruiting cycle this year?
Depends on who you talk to, but I mean, I haven't talked to Deuce recently. I'll probably go down and see him this season, but I think more than anything else, proximity. Auburn, they recruited him early, if you remember, and then for whatever reason, it didn't go great early on, but they came back around after the whole Juju thing. Don't get me started on that.
Yeah.
So, and he's been on campus. I think Deuce committed too early to Notre Dame personally. He's visited Ole Miss a couple of times. He's been to Auburn. I think that probably helps now that he's got a little more clear picture. But Auburn's effort is part of it, and he's a Southern kid. Those would be the main things I would look at. Still a long way to go, but if he flips now, you know what? That they've done all they can. If they don't get him, for whatever reason, it won't be Auburn's lack of effort. I can tell you that.
Yeah, to me, this feels like, okay, he's starting to get recruited. He emerges as this really dynamic and athletic quarterback, and he steps foot on campus, which I've never been, but it sounds like Notre Dame's campus is just something special about it. And Notre Dame's a massive brand, and he's far away from home. He's this kid from Mississippi, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, this feels super, super great. Then over the course of time where he talks to his family and it's like they're not going to be able to get up there as much, or, wow, that is a long way away from home when there's SEC schools that really, really want me. And maybe the realization of what all this actually means settles in a little bit, and it makes sense for his life to fit in elsewhere. I mean, that's what this feels like to me. And props to Hugh Freeze and his coaching staff for positioning themselves next to that, if that is what really happened.
Yeah, I'm sure that's part of it. I mean, you're going to sell proximity. You talks about that at some of the press conferences we go to.
Yeah, sure.
I want to recruit Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, schools that we touch.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a kid that was 45 minutes from Mobile. So yeah, I get it. I'm not sure what his timeline will be. I've heard about 100 things.
Yeah, me too.
So I know he's still talking to multiple schools. I don't envy him.
I can't imagine he lets this go into the season. I can't imagine that.
I would not be surprised at all, actually. Regardless,
if it went into the season?
Regardless of whether or not he flips, this will go into the season. That's how this.
All right.
So, I mean, I've said this forever, especially with the elite quarterback kids, and his potential is insane for anybody that hasn't watched him. There's not going to be any relinquishment, especially from Kiffin. I'm not sure if Notre Dame will cut bait, but Kiffin, his scenario with Auburn's is a little contentious. I don't know where that started, by the way. I'd love to hear your story on that at some point. But
Daryl asked him point blank. Daryl asked him that question point blank at media days, and he kind of dodged the question. So.
Did he really? Of all people to dodge it, Lane? wow. But I think he fits Lane's offense, which really isn't that much different than Hughes, and it's an in-state kid. So I get it. But I think with Notre Dame, it would be less likely that they would stick. I don't think they will unless something comes to fruition in the next month or so.
You've seen Deuce both at camps and in a game. You drove over there to see him in a game too last year. What stands out about his ability? We all know how athletic he is. The vertical jump, the 40 time with that size frame is special. We all know that. But the passing element of his game, where are you with that?
Two things. Number one, last year he was pretty inconsistent with his footwork.
Yeah, right.
He started working with QB country this spring, and he's just played a lot more. His development in a 3-4 month span has been incredible, especially with the deep ball. Looking off a safety to one side, throwing back behind the other safety who started to rotate. Like, he beats guys deep, and he's just got such a natural flick of the wrist. He's got a 70-yard arm, literally.
Yeah, just got to clean it up a little bit.
Yeah, so like all that is incredible. He will make awkward throws look easy when a guy's in his face. All the things you think of like at a shortstop getting taken out by a runner trying to do a double play, Deuce is that at 6'4.5", 210. Mm-hmm. So now it's just, like you said, cleaning it up. There's so much to work with. Any quarterback coach would be a fool not to want to try to be with that, because he could be the first pick in the draft. He could also be a guy that doesn't ever play too. I mean, he's still got to learn. It's quarterback. It's hard.
Yeah, the amount of like possible outcomes for Deuce Knight, it's so, because the ceiling is so high and the floor is pretty low too, just because there's so many variables with his game, but you've got to take him. Like, if you've got a shot, the upside is 100%. So tremendous, you have to take him.
That's why, like, do you think Kiffin with his quarterback room would have continued to recruit him as long as he did? I mean, their quarterback room's really good. Mm-hmm. If it wasn't. So your point is justified. Say what you want about Kiffin, he knows quarterbacks. I think.
Well, and you just said, one potential option, he's the first pick of the draft who puts it together. I talked to somebody either yesterday or 2 days ago where their words were, if he puts it all together, he wins a Heisman.
Oh, great. Like, that's another way to put it. If you win the Heisman, there's a pretty good chance you're.
Yeah, strong correlation there. But just as far as like the upside of like, if it all clicks, there's going to be so many people that compare him to Cam Newton if he does come to Auburn and start.
Oh my goodness.
I mean,
I feel sorry for him for hearing that, but
I'm not saying that you should, but I'm saying it. I mean, they compare Jeremy Johnson to Cam. People compare Joey Gatewood to Cam. That's just something that happens when you come to Auburn, and
it is what it is.
And you have that kind of style of play. So I mean, we'll see certainly what happens with him, but I can't wait. Assuming he does flip, we'll certainly see what happens with all of that. You made an interesting comment about like, will Notre Dame cut bait at this point? Because I mean, Notre Dame doesn't play this game in recruiting. This is not a situation where they typically fight for somebody who's already committed to them, because usually when you commit to Notre Dame, you don't take any more visits. This is kind of a unique situation. I mean, do you think that's realistic that they do that? Or do you think this is this is going to end anyway? Let's just chill for a second and see what happens.
Well, I know right now they're fighting for him, but just the personalities involved, the thing they have to worry about and what they've built their culture on is once you're committed, you're committed. And if he takes, or if he even schedules an official visit, that's the official, unofficial thing's goofy, but Notre Dame doesn't allow officials. For the record, people asking, Dabo doesn't even allow unofficials. He's the really, he's super extreme. But I just don't think with the people like Denbrock, that's a coordinator there, etc. I don't think they will if he keeps dragging it out, going back and forth.
Yeah.
Because he's told both sides he's coming, you know what I mean? It's like at some point,
I got you. Yeah.
You gotta say something, be done.
Right. All right. You went to practice yesterday. What's the biggest surprise? I want to touch on that next, right here on Locked On Auburn. Thank you so much to making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. For your second listen, be sure to check out Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, Locked On SEC with Chris Gordy, or any other SEC team. Be sure to check them out. Just Locked On, whatever team you're looking for your second listen of the day. Brian, when you're out there at practice, I mean, the storyline all fall has just been the receivers, Perry, Cam, KLS. I mean, all of these new receivers, they just look so good. They look so good and so smooth. and surprisingly crisp for how little time they've been at Auburn. But your biggest takeaway for the few minutes you got to see yesterday?
I was very surprised at how well, like everybody else, I'm curious about Cam, even though I know him. Watched him a little bit. Newsflash, he's very good. But I watched Perry and some of the other guys that haven't been there as long or weren't expected to pick. And everybody just seems to be in sync. There wasn't a lot of wrong routes. Everything was basic. And it was just like they'd done it forever. And I'm not used to seeing that from freshmen. I don't care what school it is.
Mm-hmm.
Bryce Kane looked really good to me. Like everybody just seems to be fit. And it's like, why is it that it's just happening all this? It's amazing. Like what you and I saw last year to now.
Night and day.
I can't even remotely define it for you. I don't know how to do it. Like Auburn is going to have at least 1 or 2 games this year where they come out and throw for like 300 and some yards against a quality SEC defense. Everybody else that doesn't get to see what we do, so like, I didn't expect that. I do now. I'm telling you, I know a lot of people, Peyton Thorne's not any good. This, that. Okay. I think he's a lot better this year. And all the players around him, by the way, say he's taking a big jump. That also makes me feel because they're invested in him.
All of them. I mean, the remarks that he's gotten, it doesn't feel like coach speak. It feels like legitimate, genuine praise for the guy.
Yep. I don't know exactly where the light went on, but that's the best way I can summarize it. And again, they've been very nice to the media members. They've sent us receivers, tight ends, linemen. I asked Connor Liu about it the other day. Connor, I mean, he snaps in the ball.
Yeah.
Kind of connected. And he's like, it's just different. And he goes, it's cool to watch the ball go down the field and see a guy like Cam go up and get, he goes, it's pretty awesome. Like you could tell he just felt great to be a part of that. It's energetic and it's touching every part of the offense. That's awesome, man, because what we saw last year was not fun to cover. And I know Auburn fans didn't enjoy it either. So it's great.
Where are you with the defensive line? I know this has been a concern for both of us. It's like, what does this look like over the course of the season? I'm more so concerned about it in the passing game than the running game because I feel like they've got so much bigger on the front. I feel confident about the run game a lot more now than I did leaving spring. Where are you with the defensive line?
The 2 parts that I find interesting, and your buddy Big Jason was part of the media scrub today.
Yeah.
And he was, by the way, he's a great guy.
Love the guy.
He's talking about, he's great. Talk about the depth. He's like, it's good now because we have to spread it out like everybody going different people because we have so many good players up front. We're going to be able to rotate in. We're not going to be tired. Like he was just matter of fact, fired it out. And I'm like, okay. You know what I mean?
And it's interesting. Every time Jason comes on the show and we talk about the depth and the new additions, one of the first places he goes, it's not about experience. He'll eventually mention experience, but the first place he goes is the rotation and not having to play 60 or 70 snaps a game. And I can't wait to see what that looks like because, I mean, Auburn always just kind of keeps the same guys in there. And over the course of the game, it wears them out. I'm excited to see what this actually looks like, Brian.
Last year, somebody brought this up to me about Georgia. Of course, they recruit D-line well. They don't ever have D-linemen hit 400 snaps in a season.
Wow.
And you look at them when they get to like the SEC title game against Bama, Auburn, whoever it is, right. It's such an edge because if you want to play your stud an extra 10, 15 snaps, he's not dead. These other schools get to the end of the year and it's like they've hit a wall and you can't blame them, but that's a lot of contact. So now you got guys like Rakes in there, Keys, et cetera, rotating in, and they're a good. By the way, Rakes is really good. And they just have a different element. They've increased talent, they've increased depth, and they've also increased it from a balance perspective across the front. I think this is going to be the most improved unit on the team, even more in receiver in some ways. It won't be looked at the same because it's not as spectacular, but you're going to see a lot of teams in 2nd and 8 against Auburn, and that's the bottom line.
Yeah, I mean, you want that. Marcus Harris played 533 last year. Jalen McLeod played 524 snaps, which is wild to think because he kind of missed some time early.
If he would have played all games, he'd have played close to 700.
Yeah, Keldrick Falk played 441 snaps, and it took him until Kite got hurt for him to really become a starter, which is wild. Justin Rogers, who's a big man, played 375. Elijah McAllister played 357. Jason, 347. Lawrence Johnson was the first guy who dropped below 300. He's at 238. Keevis Walker, 233. So that's a big deal. That's a big deal to take a lot of those snaps away. So when you know that you're in, you can go 100%. I genuinely don't know what that looks like in an Auburn jersey. It's been a minute since we've done that.
Think about the Auburn team with Cam. They brought in the junior college D tackles or whatever. They were both great players, but they had some other guys around they could at least rotate. And then those guys at the end of the year weren't dead. And they were studs. They were NFL players. You got to do that. I'm not saying they got Farley or somebody like that here at Auburn this year, but they got some pretty good guys. Yeah. And there's more depth than that team had by a mile. So,
for sure. Yeah, the depth is certainly there. But it's the star power there. Like last year, Marcus Harris played better than we all expected. Who's that guy this year?
Question.
Yeah. It's like, can it be Bleedy? Can it be Rakes? Can it be Jason? Like, it could be any of them, but it's got to be one of them. It has to be. Somebody's got to step up, and we'll get to see who that is in the coming months. But, Brian, thank you so much for your time. As always, how can people check out everything that you've got going on?
AuburnDaily.com and at FBScout_Florida. Should be quite a bit of information coming out in the next few weeks. I'm hoping we have no injury news. That's been the good news from Auburn's camp so far. Knock on wood.
Yeah, there was some drama or some rumor about KLS and his ankle, and it was it was taped up, and seemed like he was running just fine at the next practice. So, knock on wood, everything seems to be good so far. Check out AuburnDaily.com for all of our written work. Please like the video. Please subscribe. We'll see you next time. This has been Locked On Auburn.